So thank you very much for joining. As Louise said, this is a discussion. It's based around a presentation just so that we've got some framework. And of course, Louise will email you the presentation later. So, if you want to take some notes, that's fine. But don't think that you have to, copy any of the stuff out of the presentation, because you'll get it anyway. And as Louise has mentioned, for better or for worse, we're recording this. And regardless of how it turns out, we'll pop it up onto YouTube. So if you wanted to share it in future, or if you want to go back and look at any of this stuff, then of course you've got that option. Okay, so I hope that's all okay for everyone. And what I'm wanting to do is also just to encourage comments to come into the chat box, and we've got a couple of very short polls as well, Zoom polls, just to get you thinking, and that's probably where I would like to start, if that's okay with everyone. So we're just going to ask you a question before we get underway, collect a few answers, and then that will help me. So there you go, you have a poll. Would you like to just choose one of those three options so that I get a feel for who's in the audience today? And you've got probably about a minute just to select one, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, they are filling it all out.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you very much, everyone. Sorry to make you work so early on in the webinar.
Okay. There's a couple of people. I've just admitted somebody else, so they might want to have a quick look. For the new person who just came into the room, we're just starting with a quick poll, just so Chris can get an idea of who everybody is. In case you wanted to fill that out. Okay, we are very nearly there.
Brilliant.
Shall we share?
Go on, let's share the results and see who we've got on this particular session.
Okay, here we go. Share results.
Oh, wonderful. Okay. A little bit surprising for me that we've got roughly half the audience are already consultants. That's good. That will allow you, I think, to just share a couple of insights on the chat as well. About half of the people, of course, thinking about becoming a consultants, and a couple of people just curious, which is great to be curious. And hopefully you'll also get something out of this. Brilliant. Okay then, Louise. So let's just move straight in then. So the good news is that this webinar definitely is for you. So if you're just curious, that 4%, then this webinar will just give you a little bit of a feeling for what independent consultancy is. If you're in the 42% that are thinking about becoming an independent consultant, and perhaps thinking about how you get going with it, then I think this could be useful. Of course, we've got a majority of people on this call who are already established consultants, and perhaps you're thinking, are there any additional tips that might come out of this that might help me to become even more successful? So hopefully you'll also get something out of this as well. So once again, thank you very much for joining. And let's just move on. I'm going to be talking to you really from the lens of a business consultant, because that's what I am. I'm a management consultant. But this webinar really is for any type of consultant. So we might have HR consultants, IT consultants, design consultants, marketing consultants. Feel free to type into the chat which type of consultant you are, by the way. And I'm just going to be talking generally about the principles of being successful as an independent. What you're seeing on the screen at the moment is a little bit of information specifically about business consultants. There are just over 60,000 independent business consultants in the UK today, and together, jointly, these 60,000 consultants are actually generating a combined turnover of nearly £2 billion. It's an awful lot, and 20% of all management consulting work goes to independent business consultants. So most people will be thinking about, Accenture, McKinsey, these Bain and Co, these large organizations. But perhaps surprisingly, very small organizations, boutique consultants or individual consultants are taking a sizable share of the market, and actually their share is growing. According to the Accounting Partnership, independent consulting, business consulting grew by 10% last year. And according to the UK government, there were more than 17,000 independent business consultants actually starting up in 2020 in the face of the recession. Okay, so most definitely this is an interesting area. There are lots of people getting into it. It's hardly surprising because startup costs are relatively low. And if you do your job well, as I'm sure the people on this call are already doing, you can enjoy quite high profit margins. So that's the positive side of this particular coin. Negative side, unfortunately, is that as fast as new consultancies are opening, consultancies are also closing. And in fact, 80% of independent business consultants fail within 2 years. And a lot of people have invested a lot of money to get into it and have never succeeded, which is incredibly sad. But of course, it doesn't have to be that way. So just wondering, Louise, any comments at all in the chat at this stage?
Typical, I was on mute.
Okay.
Right, yes, we have. We've got interior and exterior landscaping consultants. We've got office designer. We've got Steve Thurlow, who has done a talk with us.
Yes,
He's kindly
welcome,
put
Steve.
his web address. Hi, Steve. Steve has put realising your business potential, so business consultant. Dawn is a wellbeing and transition coach and consultant.
Welcome, Dawn.
Yeah. Corporate education, business relations coach and management consultant. Excellent. Sujit is from Cambridge Digital Consultancy. Get my teeth in.
Yeah. Hi, Sujit.
Specialising in space and defence electronics sector. There's a LinkedIn thing link there as well if you want to link in. Adrian is acoustic noise and vibration consultant as well.
Wonderful. Okay, it's fantastic. Welcome to everyone, and it's such a really nice mix. So I'm already feeling among friends. Let me just move on fairly quickly and just tell you something very briefly about myself. So I'm one of these 60,000 independent business consultants, along with, for example, Steve Thurlow, who's on this call as well. I started my business consulting company just over 7 years ago. And what I do is I help clients in home appliances, heating and ventilation to grow their businesses through sales and service transformation. And you can see a few logos of some of the companies that I've been working for over the last sort of 7 years or so. And my personal journey coming into consulting, I started out at the age of 50, and I came out of quite a varied corporate career. My last job was as a service commercial director at Hotpoint Indesit. I left there at the point that they were being acquired by Whirlpool, and decided that I would have a crack at starting my own business. And so ultimately, I moved from that corporate world in white goods and took a lot of those skills into businesses that were clients of mine at the time and also competitors of mine. And it's been quite an interesting journey. So that's how I came to be in consulting. I know that people have many different journeys in, so it might be interesting just as I go on, just to maybe pop a couple of notes in the chat as to, for those people who are already consultants, how did you come to be a consultant? And we'll maybe come back to that towards the end of the session. Okay. Excellent. Okay, so that's enough about me. I think what would be more relevant now is to get into consulting as such. So for the 50% of people that are not already consultants, the dictionary defines a consultant as an expert in a particular field who works as an advisor to a company or to another individual. So by definition, there are two things that have to happen for you to really have a consulting business. The first thing, of course, is expertise, because you've got to be an expert. And the second thing is that you've got to find organizations that are actually willing to pay for your expertise. And just in this context, I'd like to add that expertise is specialist knowledge or know-how that's acquired either through professional development or potentially through practical experience. So I know that if you wanted to become, let's say, a McKinsey consultant, the chances are that you would have to get your MBA from a top business school and so on. So that's sort of one route in. But of course, at the other end of the scale, there are people that have practiced for many, many years in a specific niche and have become truly expert. And so experience and practical knowledge are also very good qualifiers for becoming a consultant. Okay, so that's a very, very simple definition of consultancy. You'll find hundreds of them, of course. I'm sure we've seen lots of them that are much more complex than that, but this is the way that I view being a consultant. And again, if you want to put anything into the chat in terms of is this right, is this wrong, then we'll pick up in a little while. Again, for those people that are thinking about going into consultancy, the question really is it right for you? And we're talking here about independent consultancy. And this is really, being a little bit like me, deciding no longer to work in the big corporate world with the big salary and the pension and the fancy company car and office and stuff. And then deciding to set up, as I am here, working from home, and then practicing, applying my trade, if you like, on different companies' premises. So if you're not really willing to take that huge plunge, if you're concerned about the uncertainty as to where you'll get your clients, how you make your money, if you think it's a bit risky, if you're a bit worried about having the sole responsibility for yourself, your business, your family, your money, then maybe consulting is not right for you. And certainly if you are adverse to promoting yourself and you hate sales with a passion, then definitely becoming an independent consultant is not for you. But what I would say is that doesn't preclude you from becoming a consultant. You can be employed within a consultancy organization, and there are plenty of businesses that will employ people with the right skills. The downsides, of course, are that you would earn less money than if you were independent. And of course, you wouldn't necessarily get to choose the projects that you would like to carry out. And you certainly wouldn't be able to choose the companies that you would be working for. So if you're a little bit risk adverse, you're not sure that you could cope with the ups and downs of having an independent business, then probably independent consulting is not right for you. But if you're a little bit like me, and probably most people on this call, and you love your independence, you love the fact that you could do more or less. Perhaps you can work in the evenings and then maybe take a day off in the week and have that flexibility, then certainly independent business consulting or consulting of any types is good for you. If you love solving problems, you're definitely in the right place, as all of those different consultants on the call will mention, because people employ you to come up with solutions to pressing problems that they have. If you love sharing what you know, then just like coaches, consultants really need to share that expertise. If you like helping others to achieve success, definitely yes, big green tick in the box here. And if you like to continually learn and continually invest in yourself, then becoming a consultant is definitely for you, because ultimately you're selling your expertise and your skills, and you've got to keep those skills up to date. Key thing that I would just mention here is that if you want to be an independent business consultant, you are actually on your own. It is your business, and there's no one else to blame if it fails. But if it succeeds, the pleasure is enormous, because you've built and developed your own business based around your own person and your own skills and what you want to do. So it can be immensely rewarding. So I'm just going to pause there because I've been talking very quickly. Apologies to everyone. Is there anything you want to bring up in the chat, Louise, or are there any questions at this particular stage?
We had a question regarding one of the earlier slides. I'm
Yeah.
just trying to find it. It was from Martin Williams. It was about the 60,000 consultants. How do you differentiate? But I think you might be addressing that possibly a little bit further on.
Yeah, so just on the 60,000 consultants, this is a survey actually, Martin, from an organisation called MCA, Management Consultants Association, and they poll their members about their business, and their members are drawn, from large organisations right the way down to independents. Okay, and I suppose this is one of the issues for independent consultants, is that there aren't really good enough detailed statistics gathered by the government. Of course, you can, when you've found your company, you have an SIC code, and you can set yourself up as a management consultant. But actually, statistically, it's not as if every independent business consultant has to tell, the government or an association about what they do, where they make their money, and so on. So these sorts of pieces of information tend to come from surveys, and they're an extrapolation from the 1,000 or so people that have been surveyed. So the 60,000, Martin, may not be 100% accurate, but it's what the Management Consultancy Association considered to be the number of independents in this particular sector.
Brilliant, thank you. We've had a few people sharing how they got into it.
Lovely.
So Steve, 25 years in consultancy with a major firm, went solo when he retired and relocated. Somebody else, Adrian, got made redundant, thought, why not give it a go?
Brilliant, well done, Adrian.
Yeah. Somebody else, again, worked, doing her normal life, her normal life, that sounds wrong, in her working life, worked with Olympic and Paralympic athletes to support well-being, and wanted to expand who and how I applied this learning to.
Great.
Others wanted greater independence and freedom over who they work with, but also to bring positive change.
Wonderful, yes.
Yeah. Somebody else just left their a permanent role and is not just interested into jumping straight back into the corporate world, but think consulting could be a good option.
Wonderful.
And then we've got some questions. We've got 4 questions. Do you want to take some of those questions now?
Yes, let me grab some questions right now, and then we'll jump back into the presentation afterwards. Hopefully I can answer them quickly.
Okay. Malcolm says, what are the reasons for consultants failing at startup?
I'm going to come to that in the presentation, if that's okay, Malcolm.
Okay, so we'll part that one. How do you find your customers, and are there forums or groups that can help you get started?
That's also in the presentation, so I'll come to that. And with regard to forums and so on, not really. If you're an independent consultant, generally speaking, you've got to generate your own business. That's the key thing. And although there are sort of loose associations and networks and so on, generally speaking, everyone is in it for themselves, and you each have your own sort of specialism, and you know best where your customers actually hang out. So, forums and associations can help to a small degree, but generally you have to generate your own business. One thing that does happen, and it can be successful, is that independent consultants club together, and they then form an association. So effectively, you can then work with 3 or 4 associates, and that can sometimes be useful. But generally, Louise, you do need to generate your own business. You are on your own some. And I'll come to where you get that business from just in a sec.
Yeah, okay, and that kind of fits on with Howard's question actually. Are you a member of the MCA? What does it offer? Are there other such associations?
There are definitely, and Howard, I'm not a member. You'll find, but I can give you a list of organisations that you can join. Generally, they cost a number of thousands of pounds to join, and quite often there are accreditations that you have to go through. And sometimes for these sorts of associations, you also have to take some form of a training package as well. So they can be useful, but as you'll probably see from my presentation, I am a very independent type of person, and I've not really felt it necessary to join any association, other than, of course, Cambridge Network, which is a fabulous place to hang out.
One more question from Adrian. Chris, did you find your client base changed when you went independent, or did you manage to retain your previous clients? If it changed, how?
Okay, so on that one, in my last corporate role, I was responsible really for all of the aftermarket service and the commercial aspects of that within Hotpoint Indesit. And so my clients typically were very large insurers, such as Domestic and General, very large retailers like Currys and these sorts of companies. When I went into consulting, I had those sorts of contacts, and I was able to leverage those contacts to have conversations. One of the biggest problems you have is that when you become an independent consultant, people tend to still view you as what you were in your corporate role, even to the degree that they want to have discussions so that maybe they can find out what was going on within your company at the time that you left, or they're wanting to have a general conversation, but they're not quite sure how you might help them specifically, in the internals of their company. But I think the main thing to say here, and it's probably the same for other consultants, is that you work with people that as opposed to companies, because obviously in a corporate career, you build up relationships of trust and so on, even if you're on the opposite side of a negotiating table, and that comes in very, very helpful. So I guess the short answer is that, yes, the relationships that I had before leaving my corporate role came in very, very useful when I became an independent consultant, also to the point of view that a number of people really recommended me. And that's been a big way of me getting work, where people have basically said, hey, did you know that Chris is no longer working for X, but actually is out on his own, and he knows a lot about Y? Have a chat with him. So you'll find that word of mouth is your best friend, and people that you had close relationships with, whether they're your colleagues or maybe they're your customers, will definitely want to talk to you. Your main role is to explain how you've changed and what you can now do in your new scenario as an independent business consultant. And I'll come to that in just a second, if I may, Louise.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's it for the questions, okay. I think.
Oh, marvelous. Okay, well, again, everyone on the call, obviously, because there are quite a lot of us, we can't all talk, but I really appreciate you popping those questions and feedback into the chat. I'm going to move on now to one of the questions, actually, which is, why do most consultants fail? Okay, so that came up right at the beginning. And the truth is that most consultants actually have the expertise that they require. That's why they become consultants, because they are so good and acknowledged as being an expert in a certain domain or a certain area. But there are two things that cause them to fail. The first one is that they fail to find companies that need their expertise. And this can be quite difficult, particularly, I noticed that we had one gentleman at least who's into digital, and things move very, very quickly. So you may have spent 20 years building up a whole lot of expertise. You may have frameworks that you can use, but as change takes place very, very rapidly, that can be outdated quite quickly. And so sometimes you've got something that was really good, let's say in 2020, But fast forward to 2023 and the whole market's moving away. So you've certainly got expertise, but unfortunately not the expertise that's required right now or in the future. So that can happen. The other thing that happens is that the companies that need the expertise that you've got don't actually buy from you. And the point here is that you have the right conversations, but not necessarily with the right people, or you're not able to actually pitch yourself in the correct way, because businesses are always going to have 2 or 3 alternatives when they're looking for problem solving. So being able to sell and to convert is really important. So the summary really of this is that you need to have 2 things going for you. You need to be able to solve, real life problems for real life customers, and you're not normally just reaching back into your kit bag for this. There's a degree of customization. That's really what consulting tends to be about. But also you've got to be very, very good at marketing and sales. So there are literally tens of thousands of independent consultants out there. Somehow you've got to differentiate yourself. Somehow you've got to get yourself in front of your ideal clients. And that's really tricky. So in a nutshell, if you don't do those 2 things, you are likely to fail. And because consultants set up with limited capital, quite soon you can run out of runway, you can run out of cash. So you've got to get to the right types of customers as quickly as you possibly can, bearing in mind that the lead time from your first meeting to actually landing a project can be several months. And then you have to find a way of converting. So getting to your first project is a key milestone, and I'll come to that next, if I may. So before I come to that, and there may be some further questions coming on, but Louise, I'd like to just do a very quick poll, if we may, at this stage. And this is just to understand what people would do if they were given 2 options between being generalist in their approach or being specialist in their approach. Okay. Is it possible you can pop up the poll?
Poll coming up.
Marvelous. Okay. So be very grateful if you would just help me by answering this. There's no real right or wrong answer in a sense. It's just to get an understanding as to where you're at with your thinking. So it's either to be successful as a consultant, you need to be a generalist and address the widest possible market, or be a specialist and work within a niche market.
Yeah, they're completing it.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you, everyone.
That's the last couple of people.
Excellent. They are quick, which is great. Yeah,
I'm just wondering whether this is a bit black and white, and there might be a discussion to be had.
very possibly.
We shall see. Okay, just give you another few seconds. If anybody wants to. Last couple of people. Right, I think we're ready. So if I end that and share that, can you see?
All right. Yep, no, that's excellent. Okay, so we got 15% of people are thinking that probably good to be fairly general, because you've got a very wide, wide range of skills, and you can apply it to the broadest possible market. And we've got the majority of people saying be a specialist, define a niche, and work within it. So that's quite interesting, and I think the best way of maximizing your chances of success are to actually be a specialist, because the reality is that companies and organizations have got lots of generalists. They're called employees, and often the thing that they can't deal with is something slightly out of the ordinary as far as their day-to-day operations are concerned, or a specific challenge that's come out of a change process. And that being the case, becoming a specialist is very, very helpful, because you are then working on a defined number of areas which you then can provide further information on. You can demonstrate your expertise, and then you can work within. And if you do this, you can actually generate a sort of a self-reinforcing business. So you get your first project in something you're extremely good at. Your client loves it, tells the world about it. You get a good testimonial or a case study, and then you go to a company that has a very similar need, and then you do it again, and then you do it again and again, and so on. And you become known for being the expert in a certain area. There's someone who's probably not on this call today, but I just love the way that he's in the network, and he calls himself the waste hunter. In fact, you know, he's a lean Six Sigma expert, and he's written books and so on, but he's just become known as the waste hunter. And that's brilliant, and people know him for that, and he gets you know, a stack of inbound inquiries. So having your niche and developing that niche becomes extremely important. So just moving on, and also bearing in mind the time. This is what I would consider your best chance of actually setting yourself up for success. So for those 50% of the people on the call that are going into consulting, I would suggest that you try and follow this sort of, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 step process. The first one is to define your consulting niche, and I'll come to that in just a second. The second thing to do then is to develop an offering that solves real world problems, but is presented in layman's language, you know, that is absolutely clear to anyone, because you're going to want people to understand it, and you're going to want your network to talk about you and to explain what you do. So one of the problems with consultants is we often think that we need to show our skills, you know, and talk in acronyms and so on. I would say avoid that. Be really straight as a die, be down to earth, and come up with a very straightforward way of presenting your offering. Choose the right business model. There are many different ways of actually making money, and you've got to define the one that works well for you. Just as an example, I tend to work with 1 or 2 companies maximum at any one time on very long-term projects. So the shortest project I ever did was 6 weeks, and the longest project is actually still going on after 4 years. And that works well for me. But I know plenty of people that pick up a lot of small projects day by day, and they have you know, many clients, and it gives them options because they're always filling their pipeline very well, and they're actually turning down work, and they're doing repeatable work. And you see this quite often with productized offers, people that sell training and so on. Okay, so think about your business, what it is you're offering, what your customers need, and then how you want to present it in such a way that you can actually make enough money. Step number 4 is to build your unique brand. People get tied up in knots about this, because you know, becoming unique is really quite difficult for businesses generally. But when you're an independent business, it's relatively simple, because you are the business, and by definition, you are unique. And there's certain things that you do better than other people. There are certain characteristics you have that people warm to. There are certain ways of working that people love. You've got to distill that essence into your unique brand, and that actually will help you to be authentic, of course, and it will also help you to stand out. And then you've got to set up what I'm calling here a marketing engine. You've got to get your name out there. You've got to attract potential clients over a longer period of time. So those are the 5 steps, I think. But I've underlined again the fact that you have to sell yourself, because in consulting, clients are looking for 2 things. They're definitely looking for a solution, often to an intractable problem, but they're looking for a person to deliver that solution. And relationships are so important, and personal chemistry is so important. You know, I'm not always, probably mainly not the best person sometimes for the work that I do, but I tend to get clients because people have a degree of trust, that they know that I've got skin in the game and I'm all in just the same way that they are. Okay, so that, if you like, is my success formula. It may apply to you, I hope it does, or elements of it may apply to you. But if I may, Louise, I just want to just pop over to this unique value proposition, because it is so important. It's really at the heart of everything marketing related for an independent consultant. Okay, so just want to say to everyone, as you're coming into consulting, and even if you're a consultant and you've been doing it for a few years, you might want to step back and say, do I want to reevaluate my value proposition, as it is now in 2021? And when you do that, be absolutely clear on who you help, the problems that you solve, the actual results that you achieve, and why clients specifically should choose you and no one else. So I've just popped up on the screen here my unique value proposition, which I hope sets me apart from some other people. So I would say, for example, that I help manufacturers of home appliances, and those are my ideal clients, to improve aftermarket sales and service processes. And they've all got these issues in terms of how they get better at delivering sales and service, so that they can grow revenue and customer satisfaction. So that's the result that they really want to see on their bottom line. And then the statement really as to why I believe that I can do this is that over the last 20 years or so, I've been helping leading brands to grow their revenues at a double-digit rate and to achieve a greater than 50% NPS rating. So that's why you ought to choose me, or at least have a conversation with me. And it works. So within white goods, I've been able to, do work for a wide range of companies, partly because I'm in the area that they possibly require some external expertise, and I can prove that I've got the ability to help them and to get them the results that they need as quickly as possible. Okay, so I've talked an awful lot there. Sorry about the very long monologue. That's a unique value proposition. We might want to just stop there quickly, Louise, and see what's happening in the chat, if anything.
Well, funnily enough, you've just answered the exact question that Dawn had asked.
Okay.
So she said answered. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dawn.
Could you explain how to define your niche, the problems you solve, and how you are unique, to give us an example? So she said, thank you very much. How do you show that return on investment or results when you're just starting out? Which is a pretty good question. Wow,
that's a wonderful question. And there are two ways of going about it, I guess. Okay. So if you're just starting out and you know your stuff, let's say, for example, that you were, a Lean Six Sigma expert and you knew all about productivity and waste, and you'd be working for a wonderful company, say GE or one of these very big companies. What you could do, I think, there is to use your track record, as a project manager, or if you like, an internal consultant to a large organization that you've been working within, and you could talk about the results that you have achieved specifically for that organization. And I think that would help with confidence. And then, provided you had enough information from your target customer, and they shared their issue with you, you could actually say, based around the information that you're giving to me here, I can see how I could probably cut your waste by 5% by doing these sorts of things. Now, if you were confident enough, you could then offer some form of a guarantee. So if you really knew your stuff, which I'm sure you do, the people on this call, and you judged it well enough, you could say, look, no, I am actually going to work with you in your contact center, and I can reduce your average handling time by 10% based around what I've heard in my audit. And if I don't, then I will charge you less, or I might not charge you at all. So you can offer some form of a guarantee. And I think that will help to build confidence. Of course, once you've done one or two projects And if the client allows it, because not all of them do, but then you could talk about my last client, I worked with them on a £100 million project and did X, Y, and Z, then you're in a much better shape. But obviously, as you're just starting out, it's a bit tricky. So in summary, use whatever information you can from your career or your expertise that gives that trust. And then if you have enough information in scoping the project, then provide some form of guarantee that relates to the return on investment. Okay.
Hopefully that's good. We haven't got any more questions just at the moment.
Okay, let's move on to, so we've gone through the unique value proposition, okay, and again, as an independent business consultant, the great news is that this is unique to you because you are the business. So once you've honed this down, the next step becomes rather easy. You've got to publicize your unique value proposition. Obviously, some people call it your elevator pitch. Some people call it your, speed networking snippet. It doesn't really matter what you call it, but the point is that when you are talking to people, you should be able to say in roughly 30 seconds what you do, and it should be meaningful. You want to get this on your website. So if you have, a banner on your website, with your H1 heading, then this should be most certainly front and center there. On social media, you want to get this messaging there. Of course, if you are looking to do things like paid advertising, whether it's in traditional directories or online, etc., then again, try and bring the essence of your unique value proposition in there, because the repetition is incredibly important. Get it as a payoff line underneath your email signature. Just get it everywhere, because you'll get used to seeing it yourself, and it will help you to recall it and reuse it. And as you use it, you will actually be getting that message across to as many people as possible in the same format. And it's so important to be clear, consistent, and repeatable. And this, after all, is what you're going to be known for. Okay, I'll go back to John and the Waste Hunter. It's clear. That's his short version, but then he'll explain how he manages to achieve those waste reduction targets. And that will be his unique value proposition. Okay. So I just want to move on to a small thing that may seem obvious, but when I look at consultants' websites, it clearly isn't obvious. And what I'm saying here is that consulting services are sold and not bought. So most clients don't sort of wake up in the morning and go, oh, I need a consultant. I wonder which consulting services they offer. And then they start Googling consultants. And then they find a website that would be, Chris Dunn Consulting. Oh, I'm a management consultant and I offer consulting. That's not really the way it works. The way it works is much different. The customers have problems. Consultants provide solutions, and consultants need then in their marketing materials to talk about the pain points that the customers have, and also the solutions that they offer. And sometimes customers don't actually know the exact pain point they have, or they haven't articulated it well enough. So in your outreach, you need to be talking about problems that customers have in real life. And one good way of talking about these generically is to write a blog, for example, or to give a talk. It shows people in your area of expertise that you know what you're talking about, you know the current problems that the industry is facing, and that you've got the solutions for your ideal clients. So you've got to put yourself in their world, number one, and then you've got to sell yourself and the services that you have that will solve their problems. And when it comes to selling, there are 5 key tips, I think, that I've learned. By the way, I've made lots of mistakes, so please don't think that I'm the the sort of big I am telling you all this stuff. I've made more mistakes probably than you'll ever make. And so this sort of information is coming from my personal knowledge. The first one in selling is to make sure that you're talking with decision makers or budget holders. You may start your conversations, you know, at an entry point, but if that particular person doesn't have the ability to sign off purchase orders, then ultimately you have to move on to someone that does. Okay, and I've done this quite often, where I've talked to people, had wonderful conversations, thought something would come from it, and then find out that actually I'm talking to entirely the wrong person, and the person that I really need to speak to, I can't get to. Also, make sure that you ask very sort of probing questions to identify the true needs, because often the customer will come to you and say, I need X, Y, and Z. And if you just take that as read, you probably won't get to the heart of what really is causing them a problem and where the true solution will lie and the true value that you can provide. So I think that's really important. Focus always on the solutions, the value, and the ROI. This is a real key tip. Try not to talk so much about cost, because buyers will always say, well, how much is it going to cost? And then they'll tell you, of course, that they can't afford it or that they need something cheaper. Ask more about how much is this problem costing them currently, and you know, how much would you save them if you were able to solve that problem, and then reframe it and go back to what we were talking about earlier, which is the return on investment, because ultimately they are going outside of their business to invest in an expert who is going to provide a solution which is either going to make them more money or save them money. And then when you put your proposal in front of them, it will already have been pre-discussed, and you will actually then have the value statement, and potentially, if you can do it, also a return on investment calculation to show that the money that they're spending with you will be paying back at maybe 5 times when the results are actually delivered. So that's really key, point number 3. 4, of course, is proof of your expertise, and that can be testimonials. You know, if you're a PhD in psychology and you talk about well-being services and so on, then it'd be great to always make sure that people realize that you've got your PhD. So you've got to always bring this out to the fore. And then finally, number 5 is to be very, very persistent. And I don't mean to keep badgering people. It's that budgets like consultancy budgets, if a company has one, tend to be the first one that goes. And so it's quite important that to keep in the frame, because it may not be this month, or it may not even be this year. But if what you've got is of value, then the next budget round you may be in. So you might get rejected this time round. If you are, don't worry. Keep that contact going over a longer period. I've done business with people who've told me no for quite a number of years, and then they've come back and said, oh, actually, we think we'd like to do this. Could you have a chat with us? So staying in the game is so important. Okay. Right, we're getting near the end, everyone will be pleased to know. I won't go on to the end show, but I'm going to move on to some do's and don'ts of consulting. So what I've got on this slide is the do's and don'ts of landing your first consulting project, because this actually is the acid test as to whether you're going to make it as a consultant. It may take you a few months before you actually get to a paying client. Don't worry so much if that is the case, so long as you're building good conversations with people, you're doing the right things. Eventually, all of the planets will align, and suddenly someone wants this one thing that you can provide, and you can get cracking with it. So the do's in terms of trying to get to that position as quickly as possible are to approach the companies and individuals you know already, okay? To focus on specific problems that you can solve quickly. Price competitively to win the business. So on your first consulting project, it doesn't matter so much whether you make a great deal of money or not. It matters more that you've got the project, that it's successful, and that you can then invoice, and then you can maybe use that project as a testimonial. It's so important that you break your duck, to use a cricketing term. And as we said earlier, if you don't have all the relevant expertise and you haven't done this project hundreds of times before, but you're confident that it's going to be a success, offer a guarantee. I know people that basically said, look, I'm new to this, I'll do it for you. If you don't like it, don't pay me. Now, that might sound risky and a bold move, but ultimately, if you genuinely know that you will deliver, then you're going to be paid anyway, and you just give that reassurance to the client. And when you do set up, and particularly if you deal with larger companies, make sure that you are correctly set legally. So it might be that for certain organizations, you need to be a limited company in order to have a paying account with them. Or for other organizations, depending on how you're consulting, you might have to have insurance or professional indemnity, etc. Okay, and some people at the beginning think, oh, that's a lot of money, but actually you have to be properly set up in order really to be a credible business that a larger business will want to entrust with their problems. So that's on the do side. On the don't side, as I've mentioned before, please don't give up at the first no. You'll get lots of no's. I get them all the time. It upsets me personally. I don't take rejection very well, but it happens. So just accept it, move on, or learn from it and go back and try again. Please don't accept projects that are just outside of what you would ideally like to do, and you're a bit worried as to whether you're going to manage it or not, because if you think you're not going to be able to manage it, you probably won't, and then you'll be unsuccessful, and you really will set yourself back psychologically. Don't price too low. Don't take on too much too early. And please, if I can make one plea to those people coming into consulting, don't give away your services for free. Okay, this is a paid game. This is where you're going to make your living. You might give away some small freebies and some sort of starter packs and a little taster of what you do, but please don't engage in projects of, days and weeks in the hope that the client will say that's absolutely wonderful, and now they'll engage on a paying project. The likelihood is they'll say, thank you very much, that was wonderful, but we don't have a budget, we can't move on to something else. Okay, so this is a critical thing: successfully delivering your first project, getting the money in the bank, and then you're set to move on. Louise, I've noticed time is really going on, so I'm going to suggest two things. I've got two more slides that I just want to get through, if everyone is still with me. And of course, if there are questions that come up in the chat, Louise, if you want to pop them over to me, I will answer them after the call, if that's okay with everyone on the call.
Okay, yeah, I've got one question.
Okay, let's grab that question.
Do you do it? It's how do you manage client expectations which result in project creep?
Yes,
I expected you to provide this.
It's a brilliant question, and it happens all the time. And sometimes the consultant is much more guilty of the project creep than the customer, because while they're in doing some work, they go, oh, I can fix this and so on. So sometimes the consultant takes on more work than is strictly within the scope. Okay, so if that's you and that's your tendency, and by the way, I put my hand up, that's me, then try to resist doing that. If you're finding the project creep is coming from the customer side, the way around this is to agree the scope of the project up front. Okay, you have to clearly define it. You then have to sign off. You also have to make it clear what it is that you expect from the client in terms of resources that they are going to provide to you, availability of people, and so on. And then you price it as such. If then there are additional things that come up, then what you should normally do is to take note of those things. If they're extremely relevant and they should have been part of the project, then I would suggest that you say, this is additional work, and then you quote extra for it. If it's relatively small things and it was partly your fault that you overlooked it and you didn't build it in, and the client thinks that it should be in there, then you're probably going to have to suck it up and just accept that this project that you thought was going to take 6 weeks is now going to take 7, and potentially make a little bit less money at it. So it's a wonderful question. It happens all of the time, and it is, I think, a good example of why you have to be as clear as you can in the lead up to actually landing the business, have as many conversations as possible and very clearly scope the work. And as you go through those conversations, you develop a really good relationship with the client. And what you'll often find, and it's happened to me quite often, that a customer will say, we need this extra thing done. Can you do it? That's an extra month's work. We're more than happy to pay you. And once you've got that relationship, it's not so difficult. You can always ask, okay, if you think you're doing some extra work and you think you should be paid for it, I would say ask. You know, these are businesses and you are also a business, okay? I hope that sort of answers it and gives some people a little bit of confidence.
Hopefully. I've got a couple more about pricing and charging.
Okay.
As well. Should we park those while you go through your last two slides?
Yeah, can we park those and just go through the last two slides just to get to the end, because there might be a couple of little bits of advice that might help then. So this last slide that we saw was about landing your first consulting project, and all the things leading up to it were about really getting yourself in shape to land that first project. These next couple of slides are about how you then go on and develop your business. And I think it's relatively simple to grow your business. Okay, to a certain degree, the hardest part is getting to that first client and securing that first client. Once you've done that, then there are two strategies that you employ, that all consultants employ. First one is land and expand. So this is effectively, you've landed your first client, you look around and they look around and they say, oh, it's been wonderful working with Louise. She's fantastic at customer experience. This is another project. Do you think you could help us, Louise? And then away you go. You're doing more work for the same client. And that's actually been probably the biggest way of me continuing to get work already within a company. And that then basically allows them to say, just while you're here, can you also do this? Do you have enough time? Can you give us another month of your expertise? The second one is rinse and repeat. And this is more for where you have quite a repeatable process that could be sold to multiple companies, or where you know that in a particular industry, and you're an industry specialist, lots of companies are having all the same problem. And you've solved it for someone else, hopefully the market leader. And then you can go right along the line to number 2, number 3, number 4 and say, I was working for, Whirlpool and fantastic job that I've done to solve this particular problem. And then you go and talk to Bosch, who then say, oh God, if you did that for Whirlpool and we noticed that they won this award, could you do the same for us? And so then you're into rinse and repeat mode, okay? And of course, for strategy 1 to succeed, the land and expand, you have to have done fantastic work at a particular client and built a really good relationship, because it's a natural process that they just basically say, we love you, do some more work with you. And for strategy 2 to work, you need to have something that is very much in demand right across all of the clients in your sector. And you can explain you've done it for company A, but you can also do it for company B, C, D, etc. Okay. So I'll make this the last slide because we are at 12 o'clock and everyone needs to go. I just want to make one small point here, which is that consulting success is as much about mindset as a skill set. I know that everyone on this call has got all the skills to do a wonderful job for multiple different clients. And success really is a sort of a mental toughness that you have to have as an independent. You have to be able to manage your own ego. No one's phoning me up because I've got a position in a corporation anymore, or inviting me out to Wimbledon or anything like that. I'm a small person in a small business, and so that's who I am now. You have to secure paying clients, and that's difficult, and you have to be bold enough to charge your fee. It could be £1,000 a day, but you're worth it. Trust me, you are worth it to companies that have got multi-million-pound turnovers. You've got to find time to work on your business and not just with businesses, because one of the problems that you have is that you're so ingrained in doing a great job on projects that when the project ends, you've got nothing to work on next. So somehow, as you're working for clients, you have to work on the marketing, on your website, and so on. Number 4, you've got to make enough money. And genuinely, for those people that are looking to come into this now, if within 18 months, you're not making as much money as when you were employed, it probably is time to go back to paid employment, because I would suggest at that stage you're probably not going to make it. And the final thing just to say is you've got to show some resilience in the face of adversity. 2.5 years into my business, I was coasting. I was possibly a little bit arrogant. I had 2 very, very large projects to run. Brexit hit, much to everyone's surprise. Budgets got pulled, and suddenly, from having more work than I could cope with, I had nothing. So, of course, I then managed to move on and get other things. But the point is that you will get setbacks. And they might be small or they might be quite big, like my Brexit problem, but you can recover from them and you can make a good business. So I've talked an awful lot. I'm terribly sorry to all those people that I've whittled on to, but please, if there is anything that you, any questions you've got, you can always contact me. Okay, I'm really quite open. Find me on LinkedIn or whatever. If Louise wants to pass me on anything from the chat, I'm more than happy to send you an email with a quick response. Okay. And the very last thing is you'll get this presentation as a PDF, but in this presentation, at the very last page, I've given you a whole bunch of links, okay, which I think you might find helpful. Okay, there is a lot of not good, not relevant advice out there from people that aren't really consultants, but you know, have written blogs and stuff about it. So the website articles I'm showing you are written by consultants for consultants. I'll give you some really good tips. And I've read a number of books which I found very, very helpful. And these are 4 books here that if you wanted to buy them or borrow them or whatever, they're very, very worthwhile. They will certainly help you with all of the nuts and bolts of how you become a successful, professional, independent consultant. So I set a timer with Louise. I failed because I've gone beyond time. So I'm terribly sorry again. But thank you everyone for joining me today. And I do hope this has been in some way useful to you.
Yeah, we've got some thanks coming in on the chat as well, which is fantastic. So thank you everybody for coming. Thank you very much for Chris as well for sharing your knowledge, and I think it's been a really helpful session, and it's jogged people's minds and memories, and I'm reading the chat at the same time, which I really can't do. Do you want to take, we've got those 2 questions on charging, where's it gone? Charging by results or by duration, like a daily rate.
Yes, yes.
Pricing. I don't know if you guys who asked the questions want to stay on.
Yeah, I'm happy to. Yeah, I'm happy to answer that one. So how you charge, and this comes into the business model piece that I had a bullet on, is really important. And there are different ways of doing it. Clients will always ask you, what's your day rate? Okay, and I'm sure consultants that are still on here are probably smiling with me. And it's a big trap, really. And my advice to everyone is to try to avoid this sort of hourly billing or day rate charging, because it's really quite negative in many respects. So it's negative because you then are going into a sort of a price comparison. So, you know, if Louise is charging 500 and Chris is charging 600 and so on, then it sort of squeezes you into that. But it's not the day that is important, it's actually the result that's important. So if it took Louise 20 days to do what Chris could do in 10 days, and Louise is charging 500 and Chris is charging 600, I prefer to pay the 6,000, please, as opposed to the £10,000. And so try to avoid day rate charging. What I do personally is I work on a project fee. Okay, so I will sit down with the client. We'll look at what we need to do and what success looks like in the project. Realistically, with their resources and my resources, how long is this likely to take? And we'll agree a time plan, and we'll agree the deliverables. And then effectively what we're saying is, client X, during the next 3 months, I'm going to work with you and your team, and we're going to deliver this result by the end of that 3-month period. And the price for that will be, I'll just make something up now, £30,000. Okay, and they then sign off on the £30,000. And going back to the previous question, if it turns out that in the end it takes a little bit longer and it's my fault because I've misjudged something, then I've still charged them £30,000, but it may have taken me 4 months. If, on the other hand, all of the holdups are due to the client, at any point I can come back and say, look, we're never going to beat our target because, but I still have to charge you £30,000. So you have a much more reasonable discussion. So that's the way that I work. But other consultants have other charging mechanisms too. So some will do paid for results. So they'll basically say, if they can quantify something, I'm going to save you £1 million. If I can save you £1 million, then my fee will be 10% of that £1 million. So your benefit is 900,000 and mine is 100,000. Now, regardless of whether it took you 2 days to get the £1 million or not, provided the £1 million pops out at the other end, and of course I'm exaggerating, then your fee is assured. You walk away with your £100,000. The customer's delighted because they've walked away with 900,000. And there are 2 other small things I can mention just for those people that are still on the call. Often when you get to the end of a project and there's not a new project that's instantly ready to start, but the customer wants a little bit of a safety net, then you have the opportunity to offer a retainer. And this is really very common in consulting. So you basically say to the customer, look, we're finished with the project. Hopefully you're confident and it is into business as usual. But if you need me for the next month or 2, then you can call on my services. And that's a pay for access retainer. And normally it's a small amount of money. And sometimes the customer will phone you, sometimes they won't, but they will have paid you for the ability to call on you at some particular point just after the project is completed. The other type of retainer is basically when the customer says to you, we're definitely going to want to do more work with you, but we're not quite sure what it will be at the moment, but we don't want you to go off and work for someone else. So can we pay you for some work that you will undertake for a sort of future date? So we'll pay you on the basis of, 2 days per week, per month, let's say, just so that we keep you on board. And if there's work that comes up and you've got 2 days worth of work, then we'll pay you for it in that way. Okay. So retainers are also a very popular way of working. I think it's for each individual consultant, based around their client needs, based around the way that they work, to define which works better for them. Okay. So as I say, I personally don't like day rates, but I wouldn't discount it, just as long as your day rate is realistic and it is backed with the results that you're going to achieve, so that when different consultants' day rates are being compared, there are more than one metric that they're looking at. Project rates probably are the best, with some form of a success fee. That is probably the best thing that you can do, because it's a win-win. Day rates also are not good for customers, because as a consultant, so long as you're being paid your, let's say, £500 per day, you don't mind if the days just go on and on and on and on. It's a bit like being in the taxi meter. And then if there are all these extra scope creep things, you're very happy too, because you just say, yeah, sure, that's an extra 3 days work, and it just rolls on. But it's not beneficial for the customer. Customers much prefer to say, I'm not paying you for the days that you work. You're not an employee. I'm paying you to deliver results for me. So specify the project, define the results, deliver the results, and get paid for that. One last thing just to mention, if you are going to price on a project basis and the project goes on for a long period of time, like 6 months, make sure that you charge monthly. And you'll obviously have a Gantt chart, you'll be progressing towards the goal, and then have monthly reviews to say, look, we are actually 20% through the project. We're happy that we've nailed down this stage. I'm now going to bill you for 1 month. So that's, 1/6 of the total. And then in this instance, you bill £5,000. Then as you move to the next month, you bill the next 5,000 and so on, until eventually, once the project is fully complete, the last 5,000 drops in and the 30,000 project is complete. Okay, so I talked a lot more than I intended to. Apologies again, but hopefully those sort of models in brief help you. But if anyone wants just to contact me after this at any point, I might be able to send them a couple of bits and bobs that might actually help in terms of materials. Okay.
Okay, yes, I'm conscious of the time actually, and people are sloping off. So we do have, so Howard makes a very good point about beware IR35 if you go on and on.
Yep.
And Leela has a question about consultancy agreement templates, which I will forward on to you afterwards, I think. The
Yes,
one I'm
please.
conscious that we haven't, you've got lots of thanks as well in the chat, which is great. So I will definitely send that over to you as well. And we've recorded the session, so I'll have the chat files for you. Sally Ann, I'm very conscious we haven't, I don't think, really addressed your question. I'm just checking, yes, Sally Ann's still on the call, which was about working out pricing and the proportion of saving /benefit to customer /hourly rate. And I wasn't sure whether that was picked up in the charging by results or duration question.
Yes, I tried to. So apologies, Sally, and I didn't come out as clearly as I intended. But if you're very much in a results-based business and you can show that through your input a cost saving has been made, or an improvement to revenue or profitability has been made, then you would have to, of course, develop a spreadsheet which would show how you get from your as-is position to your to-be position with the saving or the additional benefit. And then what you would have to do is to show your price or your fee in proportion to that. So let's just say that you saved £10,000 and your fee was 5,000. You would then be able to show to the customer that by investing £5,000 in you, they had an overall benefit of 10,000. If they remove the investment, they've got a net benefit of 5,000. So it was very worthwhile bringing you in. And if there are some side benefits, such as you share your knowledge and expertise and you do a bit of coaching and mentoring for the teams that are carrying on once you leave the project, then that's additional productivity and help and support that may not be strictly measurable, but would be very useful to your clients.
Brilliant. She's just come back and said, how much of the proportion of the benefit is fair? Probably worth a discussion.
It would be. Generally speaking, you want to think in terms of a benefit for the customer that's at least 3 times the investment that they make. Okay, so in this instance, if you were to charge them, let's say, £10,000, you'd want them to have an overall benefit of let's say, £30,000 that they would be able to bring onto their bottom line. The truth in consulting is sometimes very difficult to accurately assess the benefits, because you do the work to put in place something new that over time will provide this benefit. So it's not normally the case that you come and do something, you say, there you go, there's your £30,000. It's more that over the course of the next year, there will be £30,000. But of course, you leave before the £30,000 actually accrues. So these discussions end up being business case discussions. You implement something, you show them the early wins, and then you extrapolate over time. And over time, they could continue to have those benefits for months and months or years and years. So it's generally the case when you are helping, like I do, businesses to grow their revenue, that in your project, you instantly see an uplift but then they continue to build upon the success of the project, and then it goes exponential. So it's often the case that it can be 10 times or even 20 times. But yeah, a rule of thumb, they want to get 3 times the benefit probably that you yourself will draw out of the consultancy engagement. I hope that helps, Sally Ann.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, she says great, thanks, and realise this may vary greatly. I think we better bring it to an end. It seems like we could go on and on. Chris, thank you so much. We've just got a very few people hanging on at the end here as well. I think I've got the feeling that this could run and run. So thank you so much for that. What a brilliant suggestion. And we have so many consultants, and I think that's given us a great insight into the nuts and bolts really of how you operate and what goes on behind the scenes. Brilliant suggestion. Thank you so much for your time.